And so the downbeat falls on the 20th edition of the Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. Hello and welcome from wherever you may be joining us to the 2025 installment of the Sicmf, coming to you live once again from outside the Enler Concert Hall in Stellenbosch, South Africa. I'm John Woodland, and I'm very happy once again to be your host for the next 10 days of chamber music magic. It's one of the wettest evenings we've experienced this winter here in the Cape of Storms, but that's done nothing to dampen the buzz of excitement here in the Stellenbosch Concerto. How do these live streams work? Well, each evening at 8 o'clock for the next 10 days until the 13th of July, starting tonight, we'll be bringing you the evening concerts, the jewels in the crown of this festival. The first 7 are the faculty concerts presented by the experienced musicians who lead this festival, and the last 3 are the student orchestral showcases. That's next Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and they all come to you from the Enler Hall just inside here to my left, and I'll be your guide during the evenings to introduce you to the pieces and the musicians. Before each concert and during each interval, I'll also be chatting to the musicians and many others who make this very special festival happen. And so, being the Sicmf's 20th year, this year's Chamberfest started off a little differently. Last night, we were treated to a special orchestral concert comprising alumni of this wonderful festival. It was led by concertmaster Ian Watson, who attended the very first Sicmf back in 2004. And it was conducted by Jacobus de Jager, and the first work on the program was the world premiere of a new piece by Matthijs van Dijk, a much-loved local composer, A Pulse Before Dawn. Now you can re-watch the full work and my chat with Matthijs on our YouTube channel, but for now, here are the closing minutes of that work, with a pulse running through it described by the composer as the heartbeat of creative potential, that anticipatory feeling just before inspiration strikes.
orchestra on its feet, together with their conductor, Jacobus de Jager, who's now singled out the composer, whom you'll recognize from our chat together a bit earlier, Matthijs van Dijk. That was the world premiere of his piece, especially written for this occasion, for this concert, as we celebrate 20 years of the Sicmf, A Pulse Before Dawn.
An extract there from the first performance of a new work by local composer Matthijs van Dijk, entitled The Pulse of Dawn, that we heard just last night, and setting the anticipatory feeling for this year's Sicmf. And just after that, we had the Gershwin Piano Concerto in F with soloist Leo Gevisser, who's carving out a really big name for himself overseas. And we're very fortunate to have him as our guest this evening, just before the concert. Leo, thanks for making time.
Of course, it's great to be here.
I expect to see your hands still in motion after last night's
It's still kind of violent, it's still kind of
vibrating.
Yeah.
Perhaps just before we talk about that piece and sort of your musical exploits and where you're going with your career, I mean, yours is very much a story that's embedded in the Sicmf. Your teachers being Nina and Luis, both of whom were founders of this festival.
Yes.
So it was natural that you'd be involved with this festival for many years.
Yeah, so I met Nina and Luis when I was much younger, when I was around 10 or 11. And soon after that, they invited me to this festival. And at the time, I was playing both the piano and the violin. So at that time, for the first year of the festival, I was part of the orchestra as a violinist, as well as doing chamber music on the piano. And just by doing that at this festival, that really opened me to a whole world of collaboration in the music world, which kind of set the stage with what I was about to learn with Nina and Luis, how they would open up a whole world for me in the music world, which I thought was very nice.
At what point in your journey then did you decide to focus on the piano? Do you still play the violin?
Yeah, actually, I actually stopped playing the violin like around 8 years ago, but at the point where I started to focus primarily on the piano was the point where I moved to the States. And it was actually this festival which was a major part in the decision making for me to move all the way to the States. And actually Nina and Luis was part of that decision making, and as I said before, it was really the opening of that music world for me that made me realize, I could perform here, and there are also opportunities for me elsewhere, but there are also places for me to come here. Yes. So it was that kind of balance that they introduced to me, which was quite remarkable.
And you seem to have a very good balance now. I mean, in many ways, perhaps this is a working holiday for you. You're here at the festival, no doubt enjoying sort of some aspects of being home, but also working hard musically. There's that fantastic performance we heard of the Beethoven First Piano Concerto with the Cape Philharmonic Orchestra that already, I was astonished to read earlier, was kind of a year and a half ago already. I think end of 2023 or so.
Time flies.
So it's a very kind of healthy relationship. It must be very exciting being in America where so much is happening musically.
Yeah, of course. I mean, as I'm studying there at the moment, I'm also, performing there as well. But it's also, this is my home. South Africa is my home, and it's where I, began my love of music in the first place. And so every time I come back here, it's always such a joy to keep performing. And, Nina and I right now, that we're very much aware of that. That joy has to be kept alive.
So just could you outline for us your studies in America? You were at Juilliard?
Yes, I was at Juilliard for 4 years for my bachelor's, which was really intense, but it was a good kind of intense because, I got to discover who I was as an artist and who I am now. But I still, obviously came home whenever I had the time. It was a very busy program. Now I'm actually going... I'm keeping performing, but I'm also, I'm a composer as well. So I'm going to go into a program for 2 years now that also kind of focuses on composition, but at the same time performing as a pianist as well. So it's all kind of branching out in that way at this moment.
I read in the Sicmf program, you've got this very special keyboard.
Oh, yeah.
Is that an important part of your composing toolkit?
Yes, it's actually very much essential because it's a keyboard that is designed in a way in which you can play any scale you want, even if it's the scale that you made yourself, which kind of makes it very versatile in that way. and it's also a keyboard instrument, much like the piano. So it's naturally that's the way I would go into that kind of field.
How would you describe your compositional sort of tendencies or preferences?
Oh, at the moment I'm still trying to kind of figure that out, but I'm working in a system right now called just intonation, which essentially it's a simple description of that would be the natural frequencies of sounds.
Yes, not the equal temperament of a piano tuning.
Exactly.
For example.
Yes. So I'm working in that both acoustically and electronically, and sometimes that involves synthesized sound, but also sometimes that involves the piano.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, that's very cool. And just to come back to, so you mentioned you played in the orchestra here when you were playing the violin. Do you miss that aspect of sort of large ensemble playing? Because by its nature, the piano tends to be more of a sort of solo instrument. You're still playing with the orchestra, but you're on your own in some ways.
Yeah, I think it was absolutely essential. It was absolutely vital for me to have done that 10 years ago to be where I am right now, because the whole essence of chamber music, it's of course, simply put, a very collaborative, way of making music, but it's also a collaborative way of looking at the music world. You can make music with anyone, whether it be, pianists, violinists, percussionists, any person who's involved in any version of sound whatsoever. You can do something with that. And so, in that way, it's naturally one's outlook is kind of expanded
broadened,
in that way.
Yeah. So glad to hear you use this word collaboration so frequently, because that is a cornerstone of this festival. We even heard Peter mentioning it in his opening address of this festival a little bit earlier. So just to go back to the Gershwin yesterday, was that the first time you'd performed the concerto?
Yes, that was actually the first time I performed the concerto. Obviously with first performances there's lots to work on, but at the same time it was such an incredible experience performing with the orchestra. And it was, of course, the most incredible collaborative experience with the orchestra, working with Jacobus, who's incredible.
Indeed.
And, seeing familiar faces. That's the major joy of being here right now, is to see all the faces that I've seen in the previous editions of the festival. So it's been great.
Indeed. Viewers have probably got tired of me sort of mentioning what a family affair it felt like yesterday. And on the stage, it was family and friends, as you say, making music together, and very, very special in that way, because when else, if not for something like this Sicmf big anniversary, would you come together in this context to make this sort of music?
Exactly. There's really no other place than Sicmf. It's really its own unique thing. And, all the familiar faces I saw yesterday, it was just incredible. Like, there's no other word to describe it. It was just, it was really familial, really collaborative, really collegial.
And just some of the musical challenges of that concerto yesterday. I mean, because Gershwin occupies this fascinating space kind of between classical music but with these jazz inflections, did that pose particular sort of challenges or excitements, inspirations, opportunities for you? Do you regard yourself as being very versatile and being able to handle those with ease?
Well, actually, I think because it was my first time performing the concerto, I was like, I'm just gonna see what happens. And so that kind of attitude was like, okay, I might as well just do something in this moment. So it was in a way quite improvisatory, but then I think that made it a little bit more exciting.
Yeah, the spontaneity.
Yeah, the spontaneity. I think it was all due to, just the moment itself, reveling in the moment of, it's been this full circle moment of participating in the festival and now performing on that stage. It was, it was incredible.
Beautifully put. And then we were lucky to have a little treat afterwards. You surprised us with an encore last night. And what was that?
The encore, that was one of Gershwin's songs from his songbook. It was called Do It Again.
Okay,
which
nice.
Yeah.
Very
Encore.
appropriate in that moment.
Yeah.
Excellent. We'll be hearing that a little bit later again. So very, very nice.
Sure.
Yeah. Gosh, well, Leo, such a treat to have you here in Cape Town visiting us, sitting here sharing some of your insights and your philosophy with us. And we're going to be following your career with enormous interest.
Thank you so much. It's incredible to be here, and thank you so much for the conversation.
Yeah, no, for sure. So now we're going to, just while we get prepared for the performance coming up, we're going to switch back to the climactic final minutes of the piano concerto by Gershwin from last night's performance with Leo and the Sicmf Alumni Orchestra. Enjoy this recording. climactic final minutes of the piano concerto by George Gershwin from last night's performance with Leo Gevisser and the Sicmf Alumni Orchestra. And Leo reminded me that he will be on stage later this evening for Ravel's Bolero, but possibly wearing something a bit different from the way he was attired just now, so watch out for that. If you enjoyed that performance and are watching tonight, please remember that you can always drop us a line and use the hashtag SICMF2025. It's already been a very busy first day here in the Stellenbosch Conserve. There was the first guest ensemble lunch hour concert with the Stellenbosch University Piano Quintet, and then a workshop earlier this afternoon with our featured composer, Kevin Harris. And after that, we heard the Van Gogh Trio. They're visiting all the way from the Netherlands. And in just a few minutes, we'll be going inside the Endler for the very first of the evening faculty concerts. Now, tonight's concert launches with Vivaldi, sort of, because it's actually Vivaldi's music reimagined by Max Richter in the Four Seasons Recomposed, led by Daniel Rowland. And then in the second half this evening, the triple concerto for 3 violins and chamber orchestra by the Finnish composer Olli Mustonen, and finally the Bolero by Ravel. In fact, the official opening of this 20th SICMF took place at 6 o'clock, hence my purple SICMF regalia and also the color that many others are wearing this evening, so watch out for that. Now, speaking of birthdays, let's take another quick look and listen to last night's Alumni Orchestra concert, which featured a familiar tune on that theme right after Leo's Gershwin encore.
And we're back inside the Endler Hall for the very first faculty concert of the 20th SICMF, coming to you live from Stellenbosch in South Africa. And as I mentioned, the first work on the program this evening is quite special. Of course, the first work in an SICMF always has to be something a little bit different. And this, in particular, is a blend of the past and the present, and in some respects, the future. And so is a very fitting start to this year's SICMF. It's recomposed by Max Richter, Vivaldi, the Four Seasons, and it's going to be led by a very popular faculty violinist, frequent visitor to this festival, Daniel Rowland. So this work was written in 2012 by the German-British composer Max Richter, who was born in 1966. And what's special is it's a reimagining of Vivaldi's famous Four Seasons, his 4 violin concerti, but he uses, Richter, in his reimagining of Vivaldi's work, minimalist and post-minimalist techniques like looping. And you will hear the way he then blends the classical and almost electronic style of music. He's very well known for his eclectic music, his collaborations. His teacher at the Royal Academy of Music in London was the famous composer Luciano Berio. And Richter's work also often explores themes of memory, time, the nature of humanity. And what's significant about this particular work is that it has a link to South Africa. This Four Seasons Recomposed had its debut at the Barbican in London by the Britten Sinfonia, and for that performance the solo part was played by Durban-born violinist Daniel Hope. And for those of you who listen to Fine Music Radio, you may recently have heard Daniel Hope's voice. He does a spot promoting FMR and encouraging listeners to become members of Fine Music Radio. I think it is important, like with Leo in the chat I had just now, that we really maintain connections with our musicians who've moved abroad. And so you can see quite an unusual assortment of instruments on the stage because this is scored according to Baroque specifications, if you like. There's a harpsichord for the continuo. There'll be first and second violins, violas, cellos, and you can see the 2 double basses on stage, but also a harp, which is a novel element that Richter has introduced into this reimagining of Vivaldi's famous concerti. And so any moment the musicians will come on stage. A fairly full Endler Hall. Don't blame the few empty seats that we see. It has been a particularly wet afternoon here in Cape Town and Stellenbosch, and driving on the roads was no easy feat. Fortunately, those who perhaps plan to be here can still follow the proceedings on this very live stream. So if you're watching, please do drop us a line. Let us know where you're listening from, what you've enjoyed the most so far. If you tuned in yesterday for the festival orchestra made up of alumni, and otherwise what you might be looking forward to this evening. We've got this work by Richter now in the first half. Then our interval, I'll be interviewing Dwight Perry, who's our festival oboist, in the break. And then after the interval, a triple concerto for 3 violins and chamber orchestra by Olli Mustonen. And then this fantastic orchestrated bolero by Ravel, which will include some unusual touches. We do need to mark this 20th anniversary of the Sicmf in as many ways as we can. And I hope you enjoyed that little happy birthday tribute played by Leo and the orchestra in that clip we watched from last night just before we came here inside the Endler Hall. One wonders what's going on in the green room, if everyone has reported for duty. Those who have followed the Sicmf in the past will remember there have been incidents when musicians have arrived at the very last moment and have even had to change into their concert attire in the green room at the time they're supposed to be on stage. So perhaps that is what has happened again this evening. As always at this festival, you'll notice the first few rows in the Endler Hall, or the first several rows, probably the first dozen rows, are made up of the hundreds of student participants who are here at the festival. And then beyond that, the public who are here to support, patrons from Cape Town, Stellenbosch and surrounds. And then often the very back row here in the Endler Hall comprises the faculty who who of course have been working very hard, who may themselves be going on stage later in the evening. But of course, all of this festival's activities are geared towards the student participants and giving them as holistic an opportunity to develop their musicianship as possible, not only through their chamber music playing in groups, but also the orchestral performances that they'll be part of later in the week, the master classes that they can attend, the conversations, the talks, the guest ensemble concerts. So many opportunities to learn from one another, to collaborate with one another. When I see that harp on the stage here in the Endler Hall, I immediately think of last night's performance of the Mahler Fifth Symphony, that adagietto movement in which the harp plays such a crucial role together with the strings, that very, very expressive and gentle movement. The wonderful thing about all these concerts being live streamed is that that means that they're also recorded and we can go back later, watch them again, listen to them again, savor the wonderful and very special music making on stage. As my guest Leo Gevisser, our soloist last night, pointed out in our chat just before this concert, when else would there be this opportunity of all the South African musicians coming together from abroad, from closer to home? So many members of the Cape Town Philharmonic Orchestra were on the stage last night to play these kinds of works and this music. Almost a South African national orchestra, in a way, was formed last night on this stage. Maybe it's time zones. Maybe some of our international guests don't realize it's 8 o'clock South African time that this concert starts. Anyway, nothing like a bit of silence and anticipation before a performance to really whet our appetites and get us excited for the music to come. Maybe it's their scores. Maybe some of the musicians have misplaced their music. Hopefully not their instruments. We all know how easily a few pages of music, or even an iPad or a tablet for that matter, can be misplaced. I thought I'd left my notes at home this evening, then I realized I'd packed them inside another folder. I fortunately have them here. Not that they're helping me right now. Now, these banners you see on either side of the organ here in the Endler Hall are very much part of the identity of the Chamber Music Festival. Not only the logo, also the color. Remember, tonight being the opening night of the festival, everyone's encouraged to wear purple, jacket, bow tie, socks, underpants, whatever it might be. And the unveiling of these banners, in a way, signals almost the start of the festival. It will have been done some days ago, probably by festival director Peter Martens. And it's hard to imagine in 10 days' time we will be rolling up those banners. I remember someone saying at a previous festival, the worst time to be here in the Concerto building in Stellenbosch is the Monday morning after a chamber music festival. It's so quiet, it's deserted after the hub, the buzz of activity. It's been going on here for weeks in the lead up to this festival, and now the 10 days of this festival. Let's focus tonight on the fact that this is the first concert of this 20th Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. a smorgasbord of incredible music and musicianship and performances, masterclasses, talks await over the next 9 days through to next Sunday, the 13th of July. Gosh, yes, a door has opened, tempting us all. Will someone emerge imminently? Let's hope they've found their scores, their instruments, their dress shoes, whatever might have been keeping them. Nicolas Dautricourt leading the way. Our violinists, viola players, cellos, double bassists, Grant Grasler, on harpsichord, Ricardo Hiniker, harp, and our soloist this evening, Daniel Rowland. Starting off the first faculty concerts of the 2025 Sicmf coming to you live from the Endler Hall. Here is Recomposed by Max Richter, Vivaldi, The Four Seasons, as you've never heard it before. orchestration we spoke about last night in Matthijs van Dijk's work. And there you heard the Four Seasons recomposed by Max Richter, performed by Daniel Rowland and our astonishing faculty and participants, coming to you live from the Endler Hall here at the 20th Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival, accompanied in that final movement by those marvelous dancers Daniel's gesturing to there. Not sure whether they're nymphs or sprites or something, spirits of the seasons, embodying the music that we've just heard. And what a way to start this festival, so appropriately a piece that celebrates the past, the present, and perhaps even looks to the future, recomposed by Max Richter, Vivaldi, The Four Seasons, with Daniel Rowland, solo violinist, accompanied by a splendid group of violins, violas, cellos, double basses, harpsichord, and harp. And the audience on their feet, as you can see, and what a space to hear that work. I was in the hall for most of it, and the acoustics of this venue are such that you really can hear a pin drop. The clarity, even from the very back where I was standing, is astonishing. Daniel paying tribute to his ensemble. How lucky we are to have musicians like him and all the others on stage with us at this festival, now in its 20th year, marking 2 decades, a very, very special occasion for this festival and an apt piece with which to start this year's festival. The first faculty concert on this very cold and wet Friday evening in Stellenbosch. The audience won't let him go. As always with Daniel's performances, just the right amount of drama. I mean, I wouldn't have minded listening to the whole work again, but I'm certainly not going to complain at that generous encore that we were just offered by all the performers, Daniel Rowland, soloist, his other musicians, and the splendid dancers, the audience again on their feet, in this very special synthesis of sight and sound, celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. And ever the gracious performer, even though he was the soloist there, Daniel really acknowledging that he's just part of the musical team. It's lovely to see them all leaving together and congratulating one another. Gosh, what a start to this evening's faculty concert. Well, I'm heading outside for my interval interview, and I hope you'll join me there in just 2 minutes.
Welcome back to Outside the Endler Hall, and a very brief word of welcome to my most distinguished first official guest at this year's Sicmf, Dwight Perry. Now I'm going to be very cheeky, Dwight, and just introduce you from back to front. Now, in this wonderful festival program, they have brief bios of all the performers, and it ends when not performing. You'll often find Mr. Perry in the audience for concerts and shows, including Broadway, jazz and bluegrass, as well as opera and symphony performances. He spends the rest of his time hiking, running, volunteering, tossing frisbees, reading and creating curiosities in the kitchen. So I'm not quite sure how many hours you have in your day, Dwight.
Some of that is a bit aspirational. When I have time, that's what I like to do.
But I'm so glad that you've made the time for this chat, because I think we missed each other last year.
For many years in a row,
yes.
So very happy to talk to you, John.
So that's why you're the guest of honor tonight for our first faculty concert. So all of these activities that I've just mentioned, I mean, they contribute to not only making you a better human, but in some ways must feed back to yourself as a musician.
Oh, I think so. I think that we have to get out of the practice room and experience things. And particularly the first 5 or 6 things you mentioned about actually attending arts events, I think is crucial to being an artist, and something that we often miss because we're too busy in our own worlds, performing things. So when I can, I like to experience symphony concerts, but also plays and ballet, and actually I really love it.
Yeah, and that's something that's very much encouraged at this festival as well, to attend as much as possible.
Yeah,
not only the
absolutely.
performances for the students to see the faculty in action, but the master classes, the guest ensemble concerts, so that one can develop this holistic musicianship. Lots to learn from all aspects of life. So Dwight, we were just chatting earlier, you've been part of this festival for many years now.
I honestly can't remember exactly how many, but after a certain period of time, you feel like you're part of the family, and you forget exactly when you were born, which is a wonderful feeling.
So to ask you the difficult question now, because of course it's all about the 20th anniversary this year, looking back, the sort of sense of nostalgia, fond memories, what comes to mind as one looks over a decade of Sicmf?
They're all about the people that we've gotten to know and make music with and go hiking with and go to dinner with, both colleagues from abroad that meet here and the many, many people from South Africa that I've gotten to collaborate with and also teach. Maybe that's a generic truth of any festival you go to, but there is something really special here, partly because of the international nature of it and all these cultures coming together. It feels somehow more universal and also more personal at the same time.
Does the landscape, the culture, the in some ways isolation of where we are on the southern tip of Africa make a difference as well? Does that feed into the very unique quality of this festival?
Well, I don't feel isolated in the slightest. We're very maybe insulated, but it's like being surrounded again by friends and family. But in terms of this beautiful country, yeah, I think so. I mean, immediately coming down in the airplane and seeing Table Mountain, just the plane is descending and so is my blood pressure. Just totally relaxed. It's just a wonderful, wonderful place. I grew up in Southern California, and climate-wise and some of the terrain and the ocean, it's actually quite similar.
Indeed.
But then you go out and you see the protea and the fanebush, and it's a totally different world.
It's not the USA,
yeah.
Indeed, yeah. Well, sorry that it's winter, but we do have some stunning days in between
I've experienced them, and when the chameleons come out on the trees, I mean, it's just magical here. I love it.
And then to the students and working with them, do you find there's a hunger and appetite here?
Yeah, like nowhere else. And that's so appreciated. The minute you step into a room, and we're all doing chamber music coaching as well as performing side by side with these students, the level of attention and preparation and just sort of human artistic care is unmatched. It's just fantastic.
It's very gratifying to hear. You have a masterclass later this week where
Yes.
you'll be working very closely with 3 students. Any particular philosophies you will hope to convey in that time? I mean, when you have a masterclass, are there sort of top things on your list you really want to make sure you get across?
Well, I mean, the main thing is that the music comes first. We all come from different backgrounds, different styles of playing. For the oboe, it's actually a different reed that many people use, a different style of reed making. So in a way, everything can be quite disparate, individual voices. But if we all come to this understanding the primacy of the composer, of the audience that we're communicating with and sharing with, and mastering our craft, then all of our differences become strengths.
Yes. No small sort of list you've mentioned there, thinking about yourself and your musicianship, the composer and their intentions, but then also the audience, the responsibility we have as musicians to communicate. And imagine the synthesis of all of those aspects.
Well,
it's very challenging. That's why I guess it's a lifetime's work.
Absolutely, it's no small thing that we're doing. And it's important to have a holistic understanding of that from the very beginning, rather than maybe learn your technique and then think about music, or something like that.
They're not
everything
separate.
is coming up together because all of it goes together.
Pleased to hear you say that, and I'm glad you also emphasized this is no small thing that we're trying to do, because music has this, and regrettably the arts sometimes in society are regarded as a nice to have, and not a central component of our humanity. And what we're doing is very special, unique, and it requires the hardest work of it all, almost.
Well, I feel that's very central, of course, and I'm quite heartened when I learn that people who first experience this art form kind of invariably get hooked on it. So then our challenge is more about bringing people in, making people feel welcome and not afraid. And then the music and what we're doing sort of speaks for itself.
So we've spoken a bit about Dwight, the teacher and the philosopher, but now more as a performer. Some musical highlights for you, not only over the years, but this festival specifically.
Oh, musical highlights. There's honestly so much. It's overwhelming to think about. We have sort of dual roles as artists. We're both collaborating and accompanying, and then we're also soloists being collaborated with and being accompanied.
Yes.
So some of my favorite memories kind of span both of those things, where I'm just one piece in a larger picture. And then coming up here later in the festival, I'm going to be performing an oboe concerto. So as a soloist, I'm very, very excited about that.
Yeah, so that'll be the faculty concert on the Thursday evening, I think, where we always explore these slightly larger works before we move over to the orchestral concerts that showcase the students.
That's right. This piece, oboe concerto by Guillaume Connaisson, is a piece that I commissioned 3 years ago. I'm very excited about this piece, and this will be my fourth series of performances of it.
Gosh, and certainly, I guess, the African premiere then, the first
African premiere, absolutely,
performance
yes.
on this continent.
Yes.
Yeah. Chatting a bit more, well, let's quickly talk, you're going to be on stage
Are you talking
just
about
now.
my little accoutrement here?
Yes, I'm trying to work out what that is.
What
I mean,
exactly
some of
it
us
is.
are wearing Sicmf colours this evening. That's certainly complimentary.
Well, yes, it's not the right color in a sense, but it's all about nature and pizzazz. And what we're doing tonight with Bolero is all about music and dance. And
we've just had a taste of that. Of course,
indeed,
so,
we did.
Yeah.
There'll be something special in how musicians approach the stage. Maybe that's all I'll say on the matter. You'll see.
One can imagine in a piece like Bolero that builds and builds
Indeed.
and builds. There's opportunity for a little bit of theatre. Very, very exciting.
I think Ravel would approve.
So going back to tell us about your day job. Where do you live at the moment?
Yes, I'm the principal oboist of the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States.
And that's a role you've had for many years.
Almost 2 decades now.
Okay, so you can remember that starting.
I can remember that. And it's been a wonderful experience, a wonderful journey. As the orchestra has grown, as I have grown so much, mostly influenced by my colleagues over the years, and learning from those who came before.
Do you feel you still have some musical mountains to climb?
Musical mountains. Well, in terms of repertoire, yes. One of my dreams is to perform the Ring Cycle in its entirety by Faulkner. I've never performed that. I recently performed the last Mahler symphony in the cycle, so now I've played all of Mahler's symphonic works.
Incredible. Do you think the Wagner would have to take place somewhere in Europe, maybe? Do they frequently have performances of the Ring across the Atlantic?
We sometimes.
Okay.
The Cincinnati Symphony also plays for the Cincinnati Opera.
Right.
So one of the privileges of my job is getting to play main stage operas. We have performed Wagner. He's not my favorite composer or anything in the world.
But there is something
that
special
music
about that cycle.
It's a mountain.
Right.
And I want to climb all the mountains.
Yes. That'll probably be a Mount Everest of sorts.
Indeed.
Yeah. Gosh, well, Dwight, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Any
for having
last sort of advice or if you arrived here at the Sicmf as a student, what do you wish you had known, would know, had been told?
Oh, just that it can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. Both understanding what you don't know and being exposed to music being made at this level and colleagues around you that might be much better than you are right now. But don't feel overwhelmed. We're all on our own path. Learn from people instead of being intimidated by people, and you'll find your way.
And perhaps a final question, because the oboe is a very special instrument. It's kind of different, I guess, because it's not one
Oboists are kind of different.
The mainstream sort of keyboard instruments or the violin or the cello. What drew you to the oboe? When did you know this was your other musical half?
Well, that's sort of a funny thing for me because I didn't choose the oboe.
It chose you.
Yeah, right. I was in high school already playing other woodwind instruments, and I was actually going to have to quit the band program to pursue chemistry or something. And the director said, no, you're actually pretty good at music. Why don't you just join a different period of band, start at the beginning band, and try the oboe. I honestly said, what's an oboe? But after that, the thing that kept me with it and made me want to pursue this with my life's passion is the role that I got to play, the repertoire that I got to play on the oboe, and learning about orchestras and not just band.
Right, because the oboe is such a central instrument. I mean, in the orchestra and in many other ensembles, whereas something like a keyboard instrument, chatting to Leo a little bit earlier, our soloist in the Gershwin piano concerto last night, I mean, that can be quite a lonely existence sometimes.
I like being in ensembles.
Yeah, and really embedded in them.
Yeah,
Central
And the
player.
oboe is very individualistic because we make our reeds by hand, and we're using our mouth so intimately on this piece of grass.
Right.
So every oboist sounds a little different, a little bit
colour.
unique. And
Yes.
I mean, we want to blend, but also stand out in turn, depending on what's demanded of us in that moment.
And your particular instrument, do you have a range of oboes, or have you had to choose just one to bring here now?
Oboes don't last forever, unfortunately. So I've gone through many oboes in my career, but the brand of oboe that I play is Loré. They're made in Paris, and wonderful instruments. Actually, purple is the Loré color, so I should be wearing Loré purple.
Right, on another night.
And I'll be playing on Loré oboe tonight.
Gosh, fantastic. Well, we'll be listening out for you, watching out for you in the Ravel very shortly. So, Dwight, again, so glad we could make this chat happen, and thank you for all the insights that you've shared with us.
It's a pleasure to talk to you.
So glad this journey is just beginning. Still got another 9.5 days of chamber music magic.
It's just getting started.
So just getting started. So the second half of tonight's concert, as you can hear, is about to start. Time for me to head back inside. But first, here's another highlight from last night's Sicmf Alumni Orchestra concert, the very opening of Mahler's Fifth Symphony, not the final one, with that trumpet motif that starts off the work a la Beethoven in its rhythms almost, with a militaristic flair that kind of evolves into a bit of a funeral march.
And we're back inside the Endler Hall. If you enjoyed the opening of that Mahler Symphony played by the Sicmf Alumni Orchestra, do not despair. The recording is available and on our YouTube channel from last night. Please do go and check it out. That very special ensemble conducted by Jacobus de Jager, led by Ian Watson, playing that monumental work by Mahler. But this is the Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival, and so you will see on the stage now quite reduced forces compared to last night. Still, perhaps not the intimacy one might stereotypically associate with chamber music, because this next work by the Finnish composer Olli Mustonen, the triple concerto for 3 violins and chamber orchestra, is a little bit of a bigger work. Anthony Hermus, the conductor, and he's going to be leading 3 soloists: Andrei Baranov, Daniel Rowland, amazing he has any energy or hair on his bow left, and Nicolas Dautricourt, who was, if you like, leading the ensemble to Daniel's left in that previous work, the Max Richter recomposed Vivaldi 4 Seasons. So perhaps I can just tell you a little bit about this next work. So Mustonen was born in 1967, and this work that we're going to hear of his was completed in 1998. And it bears evidence of the composer's love for intricate counterpoint. And it's written here in the program notes. The imprint of the Baroque can be heard throughout, from the dotted rhythms, reminiscent of the French overture openings of many Baroque suites, to the use of 3 soloists set against an accompanying ensemble. So that's a very appropriate reflection on the Vivaldi, or of the Vivaldi, that we heard in the first half of the program. But the work is also tinged with modernism. Mustonen clearly identifies the textures of post-minimalism as complementary to Baroque music, an example of how postmodern composers freely mix styles and techniques from different genres. So exactly what we heard in the first half this evening of the faculty concert. But that was Max Richter and Vivaldi. This is now Olli Mustonen, the Finnish composer. You'll notice the audience and the students returning. Peter Martens, festival director, standing at the door there. Gatekeeper, I suppose, to the stage of the Endler. As we wait for the ensemble to arrive on the stage. So Peter, of course, being one half of the brain of this Sicmf as festival director, the other being Nina Schumann, artistic director. And such a treat of this festival is that we get to see both of them on stage at various points as well, in their capacity as faculty artists of this festival. And so festival director Peter Martens leads the ensemble onto the stage. A large ensemble, as you can see, strings, winds, seeing many of our faculty artists for the first time this festival. Gosh, a lovely dress Suzanne Martens is wearing. This is sparkly. Seeing faculty artists like Zandi van Dijk on the stage for the first time this festival. Farida Bakharova as well. Some of the performers from the previous half. And so we wait the arrival of our 3 soloists for this work. After the excitement of the Richter Vivaldi, I'm not quite sure where they're going to come from, whether they're going to emerge from the organ. And we have Javon playing the timps as well. So that'll be the first appearance of percussion on the stage this evening, unless you count the harpsichord from a bit earlier as percussion. Keyboard, plucked strings, I suppose, are fairly percussive. So once again, here is Matthijs van Dijk's anticipation, that moment before inspiration strikes, or that moment before the downbeat of a new piece of music. The silence. The expectation. The excitement. The door creaking open on the right-hand side of the stage. Who will emerge? Our three soloists, I hope. No more misplaced music or instruments. Quite enough for one night. There we go. Andrei Baranov, Daniel Rowland, Nicolas Dautricourt, our three soloists for this work. Anthony Hermus, faculty conductor. And for this performance by the Finnish composer Olli Mustonen of the Triple Concerto for 3 violins and chamber orchestra at this first faculty concert of the 2025 Sicmf. soloists for the price of one. Triple concerto there for 3 violins and chamber orchestra led by Anthony Hermus, with our 3 soloists, Andrei Baranov, Daniel Rowland, Nicolas Dautricourt, and now the whole ensemble on their feet. Thanking the concertmaster, Farida Bakharova, and congratulating themselves amongst the soloists and conductor there. Gosh, really mingling deftly styles from genres, centuries that you may not have expected together. By the Finnish composer Olli Mustonen. Here, coming to you live, this first faculty concert of the 20th Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival, July 2025. Yes, they've worked very hard indeed. 3 soloists and conductor. Well, we've got another work coming up on the program, a big work, Bolero by Ravel. And so that's going to necessitate some, shall we say, stage management. There's Frank on the stage, our logistics coordinator here at the Sicmf. While this rearrangement is happening, let me tell you a bit about the final work on the program. One wonders what could outdo the 2 previous works we've heard this evening. A single violin concerto and a triple violin concerto that have both themselves spanned pretty much every sort of conceivable classical music genre and form of expression across tonality and rhythm and form and pitch and all of those things. But now we come to the French Impressionist composer Maurice Ravel, or post-Impressionist composer, I suppose. So Ravel lived from 1875 to 1937. And this particular piece, probably his most famous piece, was composed in 1928, so just under a century ago. And its popularity and instant recognizability masks the fact that it was in reality a daringly radical modernist statement. Originally commissioned by the dancer Ida Rubinstein as a ballet, this piece is built, and there's a key word, ballet. We saw some dancers earlier. This piece is built on a continuous snare drum rhythm over which a simple non-modulating melody and counter-melody are placed. The work then proceeds by repetition and change of timbral or instrumental color. There's no harmony, no counterpoint, and 0 thematic development, in contrast to a lot of what we've already heard this evening. And so as such, this bolero was a drastic break from the Romantic past. Eschwege was the thematic development of Wagner, Liszt, and Strauss, the same feature of musical logic that Schoenberg found indispensable. Gone too was the interest in harmonic expression, tension and resolution, beloved of the high romantics. Instead, this simple tonal setting defied the modality of Bartók and the overtone theory of Hindemith. The simplicity and directness contrasted with Debussy's rich impressionistic affects. And the program notes continue. Ravel was quite obviously aware of the daring nature of this work, going so far as to describe it as a piece for orchestra without music. Then there's a very famous anecdote about a 1930 performance of this work by the New York Philharmonic in Paris that led to a deep rift between Ravel and the conductor Arturo Toscanini. Ravel felt that the tempo of the performance was far too quick and therefore refused to accept audience applause despite Toscanini gesturing towards him. Backstage, the two had an altercation. One account has Toscanini saying a fast tempo was the only way to save the piece. Toscanini was offended enough to turn down the opportunity to conduct the 1932 premiere of Ravel's piano concerto for the left hand. Well, that would be a fun piece to hear at an Sicmf one year. Almost the forces on stage that we saw for the Mahler yesterday evening. Many chairs, many stands. There is a large ensemble list here. another clue for what we're about to experience, besides that beautiful fashion piece that Dwight was wearing a bit earlier in our chat, is the fact that two conductors are engaged for this performance. Our two faculty conductors, Anthony Hermus and Mike Repper, whom we welcome to the stage for the first time this year. It was very, very nice to meet him last year as a first-timer at the 2024 Sicmf. And of course, between Anthony and Mike, they will be leading the 3 orchestral concerts we hear later this week with our students, participants on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The harp's been very busy the last 24 hours here at the Sicmf. If Ricardo has a few minutes to spare, I must invite him for a chat on one of our live streams. If there are any particular participants, faculty, artists, staff you'd like to get to know better, let us know in the chat. Tag us, Sicmf 2025. There's still quite a few days left of this festival. I'm sure we can make that happen. Who would you like to have in the hot seat? If you'd like to draft some questions for me, I'd be very grateful as well. Frank with a checklist there, making sure all the chairs and stands are where they're meant to be. We'd hate to have a traffic jam on the stage if something is in the wrong place. Notice Henny there, chatting to Frank in his 10-year Sicmf hoodie that he was showing off to me a little bit earlier this evening. One of these nights you'll see me in one of these beautiful purple 20-year Sicmf hoodies. What better way to keep away the winter chill? I didn't know that Ravel scored the Bolero for a piano. And what is that? A keyboard, probably the celesta that is mentioned in the program. In fact, this is when Leo Gevisser, whom I was chatting to earlier, makes his appearance in his frills. If you don't know what I mean, just wait till he comes out on stage. So I mentioned there are 2 conductors in this work, Anthony and Mike, but only 1 conducting stand on the stage. So where does that mean the second conductor is? Or will they be sharing a stand? I think that could be amusing. Maybe they'll be back to back. Ensuring that everyone is in the right place at the right time is no small feat. Stage management and coordination are crucial aspects of music making. Along the lines of what Dwight and I were chatting about in the interval. All of these things are important. It's funny how one sort of thinks as playing an instrument as being the entirety of the musical experience, but in a way that's the gateway to music. Producing the sound, sure, and that will take many years of refinement, but then understanding the composer's intentions, the musical aspects of what you're trying to convey. How do you communicate that with your audience? How do you do that in the most effective way on the stage? Your body language, all of these things come into play as a musician. And of course, that's one of the things this festival champions, is that holistic development of our young musicians. Speaking of whom, here they are, taking the Endler Hall stage. The strings entering in the front, the cellos, front right, the first violins, front left, the second violins, the violas entering. We have a double bass as well. The wind instruments on the raised platforms there, the horns on the far top left, just in front of the timpani, the percussion department, top right corner. Any brass? Yes, I see some trombones. A contrabassoon. Gosh, and still a few empty seats. I wonder what that could mean. Festival director Peter Martens looks like he's about to make an announcement. Together with our two conductors. And
ladies and gentlemen, the Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival has always been a great platform for surprises and for honoring those who deserve a break in life. So we are delighted to be able to award a special gift to a talented and dedicated up-and-coming young musician who's an undergraduate scholarship student at the College of Music in Cape Town. Growing up in Soweto, through hard work, she has risen to create a promising future for herself, despite always having to use a borrowed instrument, one that no longer serves her advanced level. Although this has been a well-kept secret for over a month, many instruments were investigated, and more than 160 people have made financial contributions, which shows how much people really care. Our principal donor, Alex Anderson, from the Adamaster Classical Music Fund, standing here with us, is joined by Michael Repper and Catarina, also as major donors and participants of this project. And I would just ask you at this point, before I reveal what is happening further, that we give them a warm round of applause. Thank you. Through a collaboration between Alex and Nina Schumann, Penny Fraser, the principal bassoonist of the JPO, and a group of international musicians, including Catarina and the principal bassoonist of the Met, Billy Short, Michael Repper, a Fox bassoon has been sourced in Texas and transported by Maestro Repper to this festival to be awarded to Offense Segale.
hold it while I open the thing.
Oh, yeah. I'll open it.
Oh, don't worry, don't worry. Just a few words more. Here's the bassoon. Yes. I just would like to add that, I mean, in this very special moment for you, I want you to know that there are 165 people that we made this poster, can you show it there, please, too, that we believe in you. We, all those names, yes. Those people, this is the Farcaster community that I am part of. I'm proud to be part of this community. It's a decentralized social network where we share our ideas and crazy project about the future. And when I heard about your story, I really thought that I really want to tell them about this and that they participate because they really believe in the future and they build a new future. And you are our future too. Farcaster community, if they're watching now from all over the world, direct, thank you all for contributing. You see this pretty girl? She's happy, and that's thanks to you. Bravo, and just please play, enjoy your instrument, and just be the way you are.
Amazing. Well, that was a surprise. None of us was expecting. Gosh, such generosity and really paying it forward, securing the future you want to see and to make happen. Gosh, the ripple effect of what we do as musicians and what institutions like the Sicmf have enabled, facilitated, achieved over the years. How incredibly special. A big thank you to everyone who made that happen. And so once again, the moment of anticipation, silence here in the Endler Hall as we await the start of this big piece by Maurice Ravel, Bolero, that builds and builds and builds. It's going to be a lot of fun to see and hear what happens. I see our conductor, Michael Repper, Siobhan Gilliam, our percussionist, the snare drum that keeps it all going, and some dancers. Here we go. Enjoy. 2025 Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. Who would ever have thought that Ravel's Bolero could be interpreted in that way? Such a synthesis of all art forms, not just the music, not just the dance, but also the fashion, the splashes of color we're enjoying on stage, double conductors, all the instrumental color and timbre, from the wind instruments to the brass to the strings, replete with percussion at the very end. Keyboard made its appearance. A full and appreciative audience here at the Endler Hall. And gosh, what an ensemble. All those faces, all those musicians, those people we know and love, part of the fabric of this year's festival and the Sicmf as an institution. I thought the pilgrimage, the arrival, happy birthday, Ian Watson. Gosh, I suppose with so many musicians, it's inevitable a lot of them will be celebrating over the Sicmf. Dana yesterday, Ian today, well, this Sicmf's birthday every day. Thank you, Nina. So thoughtful of you. So now time for the musicians to leave the stage after, I thought, that very poetic, poignant pilgrimage as they led almost one by one the faculty artists onto the stage, taking their places at the very start of this piece. And so let's lap it up for a few more seconds before we head outside. All this excitement, all these memories being made as we celebrate 20 years of this magnificent Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. The best bit is that this was just the first night. There are 9 more to come.
One evening concert down and 9 to go. That wraps up our first faculty concert here at the 2025 Sicmf, where, of course, the festivities continue tomorrow on Saturday, the 5th of July, wet weather notwithstanding. You can catch 2 guest ensemble concerts with the Cape Town Philharmonic Youth Orchestra Wind Quintet and the Saudade String Quartet from Portugal at 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. respectively. A public masterclass with faculty violinist Andrei Baranov at 3 p.m. And just before the 8 p.m. faculty concert tomorrow evening, Maja Bogdanovic will be in conversation with Dana Zemtsov. Our live stream tomorrow evening will feature the percussion ensemble Percossa paired with the quintet for bassoon and strings by Edouard Dupuis in the first half and a piano quintet in G minor opus 57 by Shostakovich after the interval. And so thank you for joining us. Please let us know what you thought on our social media channels and by tagging Sicmf 2025. So from me, John Woodland, thank you for joining us on this first day of chamber music magic, and good night.